And I actually got one or two, bookkeeping contracts out of that. So really it was just, talking to the people that I was working with, letting them know I was open to situations, and then networking with different groups or even on Facebook to find positions. I actually, from some graphic design blog, he wrote a post about how he would just search Facebook for graphic design positions, and that's how he got a number of his positions. So I actually did that. I put bookkeeping in a search on Facebook, and that's how I actually got one of my clients. I'm like, wow, that actually worked.
That's
I didn't
awesome.
expect that.
That's
So
awesome.
I just started seeing that there was just like really a multitude of ways to get clients that were really non-traditional, and I just ran with it.
Hey guys, welcome to CPA Primetime. Today we have Darell Brown on the show. She is the founder of Pro Project Bookkeeping out of Brooklyn, New York. And I'm so excited to have her on the show. I checked out her, we met on Instagram, we connected there. I didn't get a chance to check out her LinkedIn, but you know what? I love to bring people on the show, accountants on the show that I believe are going down the right path, meaning, not just making profit and making a business, but actually utilizing a lot of the marketing things I talk about to go ahead and not only do business, but there also may be some other goal that they have. And without further ado, let's get into Darell's story. Darell, first question I'm sure everyone wants to know is, how did you get started? And we can go way back here to, why we've got time here, and I'm sure everyone is interested. How did you get your start in accounting, and then how did you make the decision to become that entrepreneur?
So, I don't obviously have the traditional accounting background. I didn't actually go to a school for accounting, although I did take a lot of business and finance courses and things like that. But I actually went more so for creativity. So my main goal back then was actually music and music business and music industry and that kind of thing.
Right.
A year or two after graduating, I actually ended up working for a movie studio. And working there, I just got a ton of experience in accounting. I literally started off as an accounting clerk and kind of went up and up and up to senior accountant. I worked there for about 7 years, and it was a multi-company environment. So I wasn't just doing the books for one company, I was doing the books for multiple companies. And because of the movie studio industry is still a fairly new industry in New York, there was just a lot of compliance that we had to deal with. We were constantly targeted for like sales tax audits and things like that. So we really had to be on our P's and Q's in terms of making sure that things were done correctly. We had sales tax credits, which was basically just like going through an audit every quarter just to make sure that we got the credit back. Every year, it varied based on the company, but every year we had like an internal audit that we had to do just to make sure that we were doing everything correctly, that our invoices lined up to our contracts, that we were collecting sales tax correctly for the different productions, and just like a lot of compliance and things that we had to make sure we're going through correctly. And then in general, it's the movie industry. So just like a lot of stuff that goes on there, where for the most part, it's a time is money industry. So things really need to be done in a certain fashion. They need to be done quickly. Any kind of delay could be a huge expenditure if it's not done correctly or if it's not done in a timely fashion. So after doing that for about almost 8 years, I actually left. I initially thought about going kind of freelance then, but I actually left to work for a interior lighting designer. The company was actually one of the up and coming ones, not just in Brooklyn, but actually in Europe. So on top of that, I actually got more experience dealing with foreign currency transactions and deferred revenue transactions and the different kind of compliance and things like that comes with that, like foreign currency gain and exchange and things like that, and just different things having to do with that kind of industry. After being there for about a year, I just started kind of getting a lot of a lot of contacts from, what do you call them, recruiters,
Right.
trying to recruit me for different positions. And in the midst of that, I also started to get people contacting me just to see if I could help them with different bookkeeping situations that they needed help with. Like, I would go and just talk to someone and tell them I was a bookkeeper, and they're like, oh, I started a business and I've been using QuickBooks and I just can't figure it out. And I'm just like, all right, let me just see. And then I'd end up helping them. I actually got like free spa services and things like that as a result of just helping someone with their books.
Right.
And I'm like, I wonder if this is something that I could really kind of take on the road and do on my own. So with that, I guess that would be December of 2015. I started seeking out opportunities that were more contract-based opportunities where I could freelance my time and see how it worked out. So I officially started my first freelance contract role February of 2016. That's actually a client that I still have to this very day. A month later, I started something that was initially supposed to be a contract role, but I guess because they just needed so much help, I actually ended up working for them on a part-time basis as an employee, but I was able to actually get a lot more experience. It was a company that was actually based in the UK, and they were just bringing a portion of their operations to the US. So then that was something that gave me a multitude of experience. Then on top of that, in the midst of that, I got my third client, I believe by that April. So within a few months of going freelance, I was able to get 3 clients, which, 2 of them I still have to this very day. And a lot of it was just really just word of mouth. I joined a women's networking group, and through just kind of talking to the owner quite a bit, whenever she would hear something, she would let me know about it. Or if I would hear something and think she might have a connection with the company, I would just shoot her an email saying, would you happen to know anyone at this company that you can give me an intro to? Facebook for graphic design positions, and that's how he got a number of his positions. So I actually did that. I put bookkeeping in a search on Facebook, and that's how I actually got one of my clients. I'm like, wow, that actually worked.
That's
I didn't
awesome.
expect that.
That's
So
awesome.
I just started seeing that there was just like really a multitude of ways to get clients that were really non-traditional, and I just ran with it.
That is, and that reminds me of a point. I was having a discussion with one of the. I'm over here in the Bay Area. I was having a discussion with one of the accounting practice founders in San Francisco, and he was just saying that with everybody talking about buying and selling firms at this point, and with the way you can build an online service-based practice, I mean, you can get the clients that you do actually want. For 10 cents on the dollar, compared to, buying a firm for their book of business. So, I mean, but what he was telling me was buying a firm for their book of business is becoming, and especially if that firm is, if their back office is outdated, then you're putting yourself in a massive decline because really you can get the clients that you do want. It's just doing those things like you just said. I mean, some of my lower budget clients, the ones that are not running ads, yeah, they're doing things like actually going and talking to the prospects that they want, right, in their city. So I'm curious, what for you when starting out, taking that leap, what's a struggle or a challenge that you were looking in the face almost immediately that you didn't expect before you went that route?
I mean, actually, it was at the point where I realized I was starting to get clients, and I came from a background that was very compliance heavy. We had tons of audits, tons of dotting our I's and crossing our T's, and then just starting to work with clients that didn't have that kind of skill set, didn't have to deal with those kind of things. So if things kind of slid, then they didn't really understand why a certain thing had to be done. So it was just really getting to that point, realizing that I wasn't just like a bookkeeper just like doing data entry and giving financial reports, but really just having to be like, this is the reason why this has to be done, and really kind of getting into that. I mean, getting into that advisory role, like I always make sure I'm not blurring the line to give tax advice. And that's something that I smack into actually quite a bit. Like I'll maybe tell them a little something and then say, hey, I think you need to speak to your CPA to get more detailed information on the compliance. But just realizing that that's a lot of the compliance stuff really is what's, killing a lot of companies and making the bookkeeping difficult at times. I would say I say difficult client, but it was just more so their books for a number of years just were not being done correctly. And then trying to fix it, like they just couldn't understand what was wrong with it. They were, good company, good people to work with, but their books were just in really bad shape. And it took some time. I was eventually able to fix it, and I'm hoping, they're still on the right track. That was just a short-term temporary job. But it's just like if you're in a situation where you're doing this for such a long period of time and someone comes in and says, this isn't correct, it's hard to take that advice. So that was something that I had to learn to kind of finesse and speak way to clients so that they're understanding that I'm not doing this to try and, add on billable time or whatever the situation is, but to really make sure they're compliant in case any kind of an audit situation or something like that would pop up.
And so I'm very interested in that sort of aspect of that strategy, that situation of bringing bad news to the table, basically, or say not necessarily bad news. It's actually good news when you find something that they can be doing better, right? So for me, just to give an example, I'll start it out by saying, if I see a firm that I can help and that is maybe making a lot of mistakes on Instagram, they're just posting the wrong thing, I'm not going to approach them in their inbox and say, hey, you're doing this and that wrong. Here's what I would do, I kind of want to start by asking them questions, see what they're thinking, see if they do realize what's going on here compared to the way they're posting and how other businesses are posting. So, what's your approach going into that situation as an accountant? Because I'll say this, just, other business owners or other roles in a business functions in a company, they do have a preconceived notion of an accountant and what an accountant is. So, and I'm sure you bring, expertise to the table, right? And you want to show them you are different than probably, the other accountants that they've talked to in their company. So how do you approach that situation?
In terms of that, like if I see something that's just egregiously being done incorrectly, I'll try to, pretty much give them an idea of what the consequences of not doing it. That consequence could be something that may not happen for, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, but once that consequence happens, that could be something that could wipe out their business. On a, somewhat less important note, some of the issues I've really seen have been around, because that's the main issue people will come at me with, is more so like cash flow and accounts receivable and things like that. So, usually with that, I'll ask to see, okay, if you're having an issue with accounts receivable, let's review a contract and let's see what your terms are in the contract. There have been some cases where I've seen that people in their contracts don't have any terms for their invoices. So pretty much if you're dealing with a much bigger company that might have 45, 60, 90-day terms, then you're out of pocket until they, decide to pay you. So even in those situations, I've had to say beyond like bookkeeping or accounting, just to say, you might want to get a legal team to really review your contracts to make sure that, for one, you're putting in terms that are favorable to you in terms of, payments and cash flow. But on top of that, like making sure your contracts detail the information that is going into a project, so a client is not caught by surprise and then, perhaps doesn't want to pay your invoice at all, because that's another issue that I tend to smack into, is that I feel like most payment issues tend to have something to do with a client not being happy with the work. Assuming they're not having cash flow issues. That usually is the source of most payment issues, is that a client is not happy with the work. So even just like beyond accounting, at times I'll have to advise, like, you may want to just talk to a lawyer, or maybe just find a way to update your contracts so it's favorable to you and to your business, so that you're not out of pocket once you finish with a project,
Yeah. Why not make the contract favorable to you? I think it's interesting coming from that angle, because I was at a firm too. I was at one of the big four, and I wasn't there that long. I don't have as much expertise as the accountants that I have on the show in accounting, but I do know the feeling of talking to a client. And for me, it was big Fortune 500 clients, right? And I was a young associate at the time. They got me in a room, and it's like three, the controller included in the meeting, and they're kind of trying to get me and see what I know and don't know. And so it's definitely interesting that accountant and client dynamic is certainly interesting. So you've always got to make sure that relationship up front is, established properly, so that if anything happens, like you said, it could just be, they don't understand why that expense is there, why it's that much. And something as simple as that can kind of make a dent in the relationship. And that's not something that's talked about a lot in accounting. It's something that I will talk about, and I do acknowledge, just because that's what I do. I think about communication, the way people react to things, neurological tendencies, that type of thing. So great point there. And I do want to give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit more about Pro Project Bookkeeping. I know we met in the Instagram DMs, and you told me that you, at first, it wasn't called that, and you kind of changed the name as to rebrand. So those are all the details I have, but please tell me a little bit more about that. What was the reason for the whole rebrand?
So I guess the other part of, freelancing is that, when you first start, you're kind of taking on all comers. And
Definitely.
It's just, at a point, you realize that you cannot work like that. You can't have 1,000 different systems for 1,000 different clients. You have to have some kind of a set way of doing things. Not to say that you can't customize certain aspects to a particular client's needs. There's definitely room for that, but there has to be some kind of base that you're working from with your clients. So that's where Pro Project came in. I was just realized that majority of my clients, and I would say majority of my favorable clients, they were really in just project-based industries. I had a lot of people in creative firms, marketing agencies, creative agencies, consultancies, one or two, I guess you can call them construction clients. It's a little bit more intricate than that. But these tended to be just project-based industries. And I realized it was actually easier for me when I would go in and work with them to create systems around their business, to really be able to let them know how their individual projects are doing. And these are companies, when I would first encounter them, the only information they would have on their projects was based on someone going in an Excel sheet and manually just uploading, all of the expenses and things like that, trying to figure out where they did it out. But this would obviously be once the project had ended. There was really no real-time data saying, you have this much in reimbursable expenses, make sure you bill that at the end of the project. Or, if your contract only says 20K in reimbursable expenses and you're a quarter of the way through and you already spent 15K in expenses, you might want to go back and have a conversation with the client so that you can make sure any additional expenses will get covered once you send that invoice. So it was just things like that I was noticing as I started dealing with more project-based industries. So it made sense to build my company around it. I actually worked with worked with a coach for about a year, and we did actually just a lot of industry research to see if that was even viable, and it definitely seems like it is. So actually, I just officially rebranded. God, I would say like maybe 3-4 weeks ago, and just started. Like you said, with Instagram, I've been doing that for less than a month now. It's probably been about 3 weeks. I'm just starting to kind of test out different posts and see how people respond. I also have a business page on LinkedIn that I'm starting to work with as well. Basically, I have Instagram connected to everything. So whenever I post on Instagram, it automatically posts to a few different sites. So I don't have to drive myself nuts going from site to site to site to post. But still kind of testing it out, seeing how people respond, seeing, I guess, what the what the viability of is it, and then I can kind of take it from there and really kind of concentrate my post on maybe certain specific topics that have to do with project accounting.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I totally agree with the reason for rebranding along with the name. I actually, the last time you told me that totally went over my head just because we were talking, real quick, but I love it. I think that's a perfect way to go and to just take your part of the industry that does need to be served, right? So I'll ask this about the project-based clients, right? Are you focusing in New York, or do you have, East Coast clients, or how do you basically split, prospect?
For now, I'm focusing on New York for the most part. Like I'm with Instagram, you can pretty much post that all over, but I'm also doing some kind of in-person networking as well. So I'd like to start that more so with New York, and then kind of branch out from there. There are some things in Boston that I would like to do as well. I feel like Boston has a bit of a better bookkeeping network from what I've seen. I know they have like the bookkeeper awards or something like that out there that I thought was pretty interesting. So I'd like to kind of explore some things out there, and then from there just really expand and see how far I can take it. And then I'm also, depending on how well everything goes, I'm really looking for maybe year 2, year 3, once the rebrand is solidified, is to really seeing what other industries I can expand to. I feel like there are a lot of new industries that are coming out that are still, they'll probably, they'll have some compliance needs around them that they would need a bookkeeper for. So even just kind of about how I can expand to have different pro project bookkeeping departments that focus on different industries and things like that. So just really trying to see where I can take it state-wise and industry-wise for that matter.
That's interesting. So when you say new industries, for me, I live over here in Silicon Valley. So immediately I'm thinking about the new tech companies that are coming out that want to change things in a certain industry, or a completely new industry like blockchain and cryptocurrency companies coming out over here. But when you say it, what do you mean? Because I'm very curious.
I mean, cannabis is one of the main things.
There you go.
Actually connected with someone on LinkedIn a couple of days ago, and he was asking me if that's something I'd be interested in. And unfortunately now I have to say no, but it is something that I have thought about from the future. In the future, actually, someone in one of my bookkeeping groups recently got a client that was a cannabis client, and she was actually asking a few questions in terms of the compliance and things that she would need to do for that. So I can definitely see where that's going to be something that's needed. In New York, I feel like it's still the legal situation that's happening around it as far as recreational use. So I think I have a little bit of time as far as the local area goes, but I know, Colorado and a few other states is actually already beginning to be a flourishing industry for accountants and bookkeepers. So I can see where that can be a need.
Yeah, and then you never know. I think you never know what states will do with that, because, I mean, at this point, even looking at California and Colorado, I didn't expect that other states would legalize it pretty fast, and it just seems like things can happen overnight sometimes. So yeah, I think there's a few accountants, there's shops and firms that have put themselves in the position to take on those clients even earlier on, despite the type of risks that everyone was talking about. and even in the blockchain space, in the cryptocurrency space, bigger firms, the much bigger firms will talk about risk, right? Whether they're doing this or that, picking up a certain type of cannabis client or picking up a cryptocurrency client, they just don't necessarily want their names attached, or they just don't want that risk, right? And so what that's doing is that's leaving it wide open for a lot of the new entrepreneurial accountants to go ahead and attack if they do want to, you know, serve that space, right? So very interesting there. I do want to touch on what you said about, you know, plans 2 to 3 years out, right? Scaling. For me, I'm of the same mindset. I'm trying to scale my own marketing firm, right? Get the right marketing people around me. Right now, I have a mobile team, but one day it'll be a close team in an actual office. And I'm excited to scale that out. But tell me more about your specific plans to scale. What is it that you need to scale? Is it people? Are you looking to add more clients or just more, you know, I guess expertise of your own processes, right? So.
I mean, with that, like before Pro Project Bookkeeping, I was literally just, you know, my name, LLC. So part of it is to kind of take it off me and kind of put it more on the systems that I want to create around that kind of accounting. So, I mean, clients, definitely. I am looking for more systems that I can integrate. I'm constantly on the search for new softwares, which, you know, I always try and test things out that I hear about. Unfortunately, I feel like a lot of the softwares, they promise, you know, everything, and then you start working with them and you realize they can't do half the things that they say. So, I mean, that's always a search. I actually, through an app that I use, I actually try and network. Whenever I see like someone that's a software creator or provider, I'll try and network with them to see, hey, if you're creating any financial products, I'd love to give feedback, or I'd love to test it out just to give you an idea of how it would work for my purposes. I actually had a call with someone yesterday to discuss something similar, and I'm not at the point where I'd want to create like software on app, but with this particular gentleman, he can actually help me to test out softwares for my clients' purposes. So that's a relationship I would definitely want to cultivate. But more so, yes, systems for me would be much more important. I would want to bring on people. I'm considering, depending on how the rebrand goes, to perhaps bring someone on in February, March, but that would be more so on a part-time basis. But I feel if I have the right, you know, systems, software, apps in place, then I can kind of rely on those a bit more than necessarily employees. Not to say that I won't have them, but I don't think I would need as many as a lot of firms do if I can really get the software right.
Yeah, interesting. I think a lot, and to your point, I think a lot of softwares pop up out of nowhere that really they have some of what we used before, and then they say that they add this new thing, this software, you know, they have the list of what the other software doesn't have, but they have this. And anything that's a weakness, they keep it out of their little chart, right? But
like, I'll go and I'll talk to a sales rep, and he's like, oh yeah, it could do this. So I'll test it out, and then I'll talk to whoever, the support team, and it's like, oh no, it can't do that. I'm like, I had like an hour conversation with your sales rep, and he said it could. So it's just, I mean, right now, to do a lot of what I do with my clients, I mean, for some, I use maybe 3 or 4 different softwares, and it allows for a lot of automation and integration. So I appreciate that, but I would like to really get that down to maybe 1 or 2 softwares, so clients don't constantly have to log in and out of a software just to do something that kind of gets on their nerves after a while. So I really would like to get that down to a minimum if that's possible.
So with the 4 softwares, you know, that are, you know, somewhat integrated, but you like it to be tighter, what does each do?
So I have expense reporting software. I have budgeting software, CRMs. What else? What else? What else? Cash flow softwares.
Mm-hmm.
A few, and then basically the main software, the accounting software, which is typically primarily QuickBooks. All of these softwares kind of speak to that. So with the expense software, someone will go in, they'll code their specific Amex expenses to whatever project it belongs to. Once they do that and submit the report to me, I can just do a quick review, hit a button, and all of that information pushes to QuickBooks. With cash flow software, it'll pull literal information from QuickBooks to populate the cash flow software. So at any moment in time, you can look at that and have an idea of, what your cash flow would look like for a few months out. What was the other one that I mentioned? With the CRM, that one is more so, that's something that they'll use anyway, and that's just for me to be able to click a button and have all the customer information populate into QuickBooks. And some is that might include invoices depending on the software, but for the most part, I still have to manually create the invoice in QuickBooks. I have another one that's actually for time management. So if a client is billing a client hourly, then the employees will have to go in, enter their time into that software, and then that pushes an invoice to QuickBooks that I can then use to bill the client. So just a variety of different things that I would like to get down as much as possible so it's not such a strain on the client. This year I thought I got lucky and I thought I found something that could do it all, and I just didn't.
Interesting. Yeah. By the way, I am not serving clients, right? I'm not serving accounting clients with QuickBooks, right? But I'm very much aware that there's a big segment of the market. Well, historically, we use QuickBooks, right? But then I keep hearing Xero pop up. And in fact, one of my own clients is a huge Xero proponent. In fact, he's going to take a lot of Xero training to the Latino Spanish-speaking market and break it down for them. But I haven't got the chance to ask him, QuickBooks or Xero, why do you keep choosing Xero? But I would, with coming in with preconceived analysis, right? I would just say that it's the fact that accountants know how to use QuickBooks and people know how to use QuickBooks. And that's why there's more QuickBooks users than Xero. But I'm interested in your take if you've heard anything.
That's definitely part of it. It's not even like accountants. The fact is that most people,
everyone,
small business owners, have heard of QuickBooks rather than Xero. So I actually have used it. I think I used it for like a 6-month period. For me, I didn't notice too much difference between the two softwares. I know there are little like nuances and variations between them. I know that I believe within the Xero software, there's a few more things you can do in terms of customizing like dashboards and things like that for a client. So I know that's I get certain requests like that, like clients will prefer to see like a chart of their expenses or their P&L rather than actually looking at the statement. So I think Xero is actually a lot better for a purpose like that. But honestly, for me, it just seems like clients will actually know QuickBooks. I'll actually talk to a client and they're like, oh yeah, we have QuickBooks, desktop or whatever the situation is. And usually my goal at that point is to try and transition them from desktop to online. But beyond that, it just seems to be more so the client awareness is with QuickBooks. But me personally, if I had to use Xero, as long as they have a good, I like QuickBooks because it has like the QuickBooks accountants system where you can see all of your clients within that. Recently, they set me up with a dedicated rep. So if I have any issues, I can call him directly and get things taken care of. So I believe Xero has something similar. I'm not sure if it's on the level of QuickBooks, but I do kind of like knowing that I have kind of that dedicated service as a QuickBooks accountant.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you breaking that down. That makes a lot of sense to me. That's kind of what I figured. But yeah, that's just that's gonna be the case for a few years here for Xero. But okay, let's go back into marketing, and I want to discover how, I guess, going forward, right, with the opportunity coming up. You said that you're kind of testing Instagram right now, right? You've made that LinkedIn business page, and you're kind of going to see what works, and then you're going to go with it. I loved when you said that, because I mean, that's the approach that we take at Gold Lake. If or better yet, if something doesn't work, then we've got to hurry up and change it. We can't just sit there all month having it not work. And so for a lot of our clients, I'll share this insight with you. LinkedIn, branding on LinkedIn, it really depends what type of clients you're going to get. For you, I think a lot of your founders would be on LinkedIn in your area. So yeah, go ahead and invite them, talk to them, introduce yourself. And then on Instagram, that is a bit more tricky to get the people, looking at your account, interacting with your account, right? So my clients, a lot of them, they usually pick something, or they pick a direction to go, or a way to brand themselves that's more of putting themselves inside their target industry, right? So that people can listen to them. And it's what my mentor taught me about, serving you all, accountants. Even though I do have an accounting background, I'll still have to come meet the accountants where they're at, and then spread my message, right? So the way I tell my clients is, and for some of them, it's really tricky to get in some of these niches, right? Because some of them absolutely do not care about taxes or accounting talk and that type of thing. So basically what I tell my clients is, yeah, I mean, think about basketball. We've got good moves, right? But we have got to go to their court, right? We're playing an away game here. We've got to go to their court, wake up at their bedtime. And once we're in the middle of their court, that's when we can show all the moves, right? And so I'm curious if you're doing anything like that to get deeper in your niche, whether it's the way you post, or it could be planning some type of, it doesn't even have to be planning an event. It could just be, hey, I know where my targets are. They all hang out and look at this page, or look at that page, or do this thing in the city, right? So I'm very curious about your go-to when it comes to that, when it comes to not being such an accountant outside and talking to them, but being an accountant that's, they feel like they can go to and ask questions. Because I think that is an incredible thing. That's an incredible concept, stopping a lot of accountants, or stopping a lot of business owners from reaching out to accountants, is that they don't necessarily feel comfortable talking to them. But that was a lot for me. I'm going to go ahead and let you talk.
I think that's something that I am starting to get into now. Like, a part of my research, like with my coach, when I was coming up with this idea, is like, where does your target audience live? Basically, where do they live online? Where do they live in person? What associations can you perhaps become a member of, so that you can kind of target them a bit more? Mm-hmm. So that's actually my next step, is to start attending, I guess, more industry events, to really get a better idea of, where they feel their industry is going, how, me with my, or, the different industries I'll serve, but where those industries are going, and then kind of figure out with that how I can best serve it, and even put those kind of things in my marketing messages. Like, hey, the industry is going this way, let's do this, so that you can be a part of that, upward swing, or whatever the situation is. Mm-hmm. So I definitely plan to, and that's why I really want to focus on New York, because there are so many things that so many industry events that you can attend here that is perfect. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them are actually pretty small scale. They're not really like overwhelming events with, hundreds or thousands of people. You can actually go and have a one-on-one with someone. So, I've actually been working to, figure out what kind of groups to attend, what associations to potentially join. I'm actually going to a networking event tonight that I think should be pretty good for that. So really just kind of exploring those, starting to talk to people, and then kind of getting my company and myself out there more in, the people's minds.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think you're doing it right. And in fact, I started Gold Lake not because, the accounting firms are going out of business, right? I started it because I knew that with marketing, you can essentially grow when you want to grow, meaning you don't have to wait on picking up that next client if you need to fill space to scale, right? And let's say uh, one thing that I do not respect about the marketers that kind of get in the accountant's brains is when they start talking about lead generation. I'll just generate leads for you, right? Leads. Um, what? And it's funny because it would be the same thing for me, which is these offices, it's not necessarily just serving anyone that comes through your door, right? You want to serve a specific type of client. You do. And that's what marketing really allows you to do, is get those clients. And so here's what I would tell you about that event tonight, because I do this myself, is I don't know who is, if there's a hashtag along with that event or who is putting out the flyer for that event, but see who liked it or commented on something about the event, right? So if it's even if it's an event that you wouldn't go, that you can't make it to, I actually hit up the people that are speaking even right before the event, and I ask them a simple question just to get into conversation, like, hey, they might have posted about their speech, right, and use the hashtag, so I know that they're speaking at the event, and then I just say, hey, is that speech going to be live or recorded after? And then, they start talking to me and getting in a conversation, right? And then that's me effectively treating LinkedIn and Instagram like the 2018, 2019 business mixer of our society. Because you mentioned that your coach said, oh, you know what, we got to find out where the target is offline and online, right? At this point, a lot of the online presence is like so fast, and this happened in a couple of years, it's really starting to take over what people, care about. And that's not to take any of the magic away from meeting up with people in person, right? That's just to say, hey, people, I'll put it this way. When I came over here to PwC Silicon Valley as an associate, right? No name, it's Big Four. They don't care about you when you walk in the door, right? There's a reason that one of the more popular tech partners knew my name at the orientation mixer and said, hey, you're active on LinkedIn. You're really active. And then we started talking about tech and that type of stuff. But people can know your face, right? When you go to the conference, or maybe you don't get to make it to that certain event, you still should be, if you care about, if you would have gone, then it makes sense to spend the time to at least digitally go and just, say hi to everyone that's going, or better yet, introduce yourself just like you were at the business mixer. And so the more, my philosophy, just to get myself in the zone with it all, my mood going throughout the day when I'm talking to people like I'm talking to you right now, or maybe it's as simple as a message, I've got to make myself realize that it's almost the exact same thing as a networking event. And the more I treat it as such and come from a human aspect, not hitting up accountants in their inbox saying, hey, I can get you leads, I do this and that, but literally, if I was at the business conference and I came up to you and said, hey, I can get you leads, you would think I was crazy. So I have this approach of conversational marketing and introducing myself, except you cannot get stuck in the conversation. You have got to make it that business mixer talk. Okay, hey, why are we talking here? What are the synergies here? And I believe that is an opportunity that all the listeners and viewers out there, that you yourself can just take to the bank with time. And that has nothing to do with ads. So yeah, there's that, and I really hope that you do take advantage of that, because in Brooklyn and New York, I know that's a tight community of, from my marketing community, even creative agencies out there, that type of thing. You would impress a lot of the founders if you left them a message online. Yeah, and I would say that they're not getting hit up by enough accountants. Okay. So,
Actually started, I mean, I've been somewhat apprehensive about doing that, but I actually kind of did that for the first time yesterday on LinkedIn,
interesting.
where I saw someone, she's the managing director of a agency in New York, and I just kind of hit her up, got a response back. Wasn't necessarily the response that I was looking for. I think she kind of looked at it where I was looking to be an employee.
Right.
So I kind of reintroduce it with a second message and kind of leave the website link to my company. So, we'll see if anything comes from it, but I'm starting to get to that point where I'm like specifically and directly targeting people with messages and things like that. So that's also another step to kind of at least get my company's name in their like kind of mind. And then they say, oh, a month or so ago, I have this thing in my LinkedIn messages. Let me just look it up and we can perhaps talk about it and see if that's, where we want to take it or something like that. Right. But that's something that I'm starting to do.
Right. Hey, I think, yeah, you should do a whole lot more of that. It's a lot of that. And my clients do, like, it's great. One of the things I love is inspiring people and upping the confidence, whether they're, whether they're actually scared to message people and get on the phone. But my clients do feel a little bit bad or a little bit hurt feelings when maybe they send out a message and then the person reads it and then doesn't get back to them, right? Mm-hmm. But the way I look at it is it's just like anything else. It's like email, like a numbers game. You send 1,000 emails out. Not all of them are going to convert or respond. But if you send the message out too, it's the same thing. Not all of them are going to respond. Not all of them are going to convert. But hey, at least you're in their mind. And what really needs to happen, and what my dad taught me in door-to-door sales, is they have got to know that you exist. They've got to know you're in the neighborhood, and they've got to know what you're selling. So hey, and I'll give you this quick tip. Here's a secret tip in the back end of the episode for all you guys that watch. When I do my prospecting and I'm very serious about getting the client, even then I won't make it salesy, but I'll do maybe a 15-second on Instagram, a 15-second video introduction, or on LinkedIn, use my mobile app, my mobile LinkedIn, to do a voice message introduction. And all I do is simply introduce myself, say that I noticed they have a business. They usually have a firm. For me, you can, use it for whatever you want. I introduce myself, say that I noticed they have a business, tell them what I do inexplicably, right? Say that, hey, accountants do bring me in to do marketing. And then the last thing that you have got to do, and it's what I talked about earlier, making people feel comfortable to talk to you. I let them know that, hey, this is an open line of communication. Feel free to ask me any questions. And guess what? I'm not going to charge you for it. So feel free, right? So that is my go-to if I need to spend an hour on a day prospecting because I need more clients next month. I'll definitely choose that first and try to do that to the clients I want versus ads. For such a small business, my bigger clients do have ads, but do you need to spend ads? You've got to look at what kind of budget you have and what kind of clients you want, because there could be an easier way, just like Darell has been doing. And I hope you do a lot more. And by the way, I know we're running out of time here, but before we go, what made you a bit apprehensive to do that? And I do have some, preconceived notions just from working with the clients, but I'll let you answer and I won't butt in.
I mean, it's just like even when I was working with my coach and I put up the initial website for Pro Project Bookkeeping, I had this, we came up with this term called money eaters, and I found this image of dollar signs with a spoon. And I felt just so slimy putting that image on the website. It's just like, you're not used to have, in this industry, you're not used to having to sell yourself. So
Yeah.
I just felt so slimy putting that image up. Eventually I was okay with it, and I actually liked it quite a bit. I ended up changing it just because I felt the initial overall message was just a little too negative going along with that image. But eventually I was okay with it. So it's just kind of getting over that initial slimy sales pitch feeling of directly emailing someone and like soliciting them for something that they probably did not want, and really just getting the idea of doing that. So, it's something I'm still working on. Like even when I first started freelancing and I was reaching out to clients via Facebook or whatever, I still kind of had that feeling. And when I would get a response back, I'd be totally surprised. Like, oh my God, they actually responded. Let me send them this and this and this. So, it's just something that you just kind of have to do and get over. So I feel like with rebranding, the company, I'm kind of having those same feelings over again. And it's just like, I kind of just have to do it and do it and do it until I'm okay with it,
Yeah. And the way I make myself do it, and I did grow up, doing door-to-door sales or having to sell things for fundraisers, that type of thing. And I made the sale. So I'm not as apprehensive, but I also don't come in like your typical salesperson. I come in so different. You're not going to think of me the same way you think of the other guys. And that's what I want to make you do in the first message, is say, oh, this person is different. Let me actually talk to them this time. And then what you said interests me about, oh, they actually responded, let me go. So my thing that I had to get past for me was that second message where they said, oh, very interesting, right? I had to practice not unloading on them, not unloading everything, right? So then I would actually ask them a few more questions and then go in it to myself. But here's what I want to say. For the accountants out there that are a bit apprehensive about offering their service, right? Solicitation, right? Whoa, no soliciting here. I would say that in the online, and it's different. You haven't had to sell yourself this much, and there also has never been such a big advantage in doing so. So that's why so many are starting to do it. But if you just think about the online financial environment, so many people, you see them in the ads, they're selling like this scammy type thing, or the 7 steps to be okay financially. And it's coming just from a completely scammy place where if you're an accountant or a CPA or a bookkeeper, tax preparer, right? Even in financial advising, you are selling a product that is legitimate. And I hope you know what you're doing, because that's the only way it's legitimate. But you're selling a product that's legitimate. It's going to help out people's lives. So it's almost an obligation to show them that you serve the market and what you're doing, you think it can help them out, and they should be interested in it. So that's what I do to make me feel better. I say, man, the accountants just need to know I exist, and maybe I can change some lives because I'm actually selling something good. And it's the same thing for accountants. You're selling something absolutely amazing while the other guys online are selling scams. So you have got that obligation to let people know about yourself. So Darell, that's all the time. Darell, that's all the time we have for today. Where can they find you?
ProProjectBooks.com. Feel free to look me up there. If you want to chat, there is a page for a free consultation as well. So you can click on that. It automatically opens up to a calendar where you can schedule an appointment. So feel free to find me there.
Great. I'll go ahead and link it below. And Darell, for the entrepreneurial accountants out there, what are your last words just of inspiration, motivation? What do you got for them?
I mean, I would just say, just get out there and do it. Just get out there, find your clients. Selling might feel a bit sleazy at first, but it does get better as time goes on. And I mean, I think there's enough clients and room out there for everybody. And then also, I'm always looking to network with, CPAs and accountants. So, if you want to just network and chat, feel free to get in touch.
Thank you, Darell.
Thank you.